because Metro has the rate of juvenile burglaries is so high, and Metro doesn't have anybody in the fingerprint thing. I said, so this is how you solve your juvenile. This is how you solve your juvenile burglaries, you know? And she goes, well, he's not going to be in.
Good afternoon, Las Vegas. This is Clark coming to you with a herd live from famous Las Vegas, sin capital of the world. What happens here stays here. Well, not all the time, but that's the plan anyways. With us today, we have a special guest, Walter Seip, running for the assembly here in Las Vegas. And he's going to be our guest for the hour. Then may get a call or two from some other people that want to join the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the delegates and so forth that have been with this Republican thing that went on at the Rio Hotel, trying to get up to date on actually what happened there. There's been a lot of various stories told. I don't know what's accurate, what's true. But Walter's here with us today, and he was personally there, so he'll be able to fill us in on what happened. And go ahead, Walter, and tell us what's going on.
Well, can I drop back to 8 years ago?
Sure, wherever you want to go, man.
8 years ago, we had Hillary running for president against Barack Obama.
I think I remember her.
Yeah, I remember that election pretty clearly. I was a real estate broker back in Maryland. Same time I was a retired colonel at the time. Messed around in real estate. But when I was ready to retire, that's when Bill and Hillary took over the White House. I recall sitting there in the Department of Defense, how they were keeping back a lot of information on healthcare from Hillary. I thought it was a good initiative, and she seemed to be the candidate I'd prefer over Barack Obama as a Democrat. So I went to the caucus that was set up by Harry Reid, and I found out that, my goodness, you could vote yourself to be a delegate for Hillary that could go all the way to the national headquarters. And I said, I don't know much about this, but my wife said, go for it. So I did and got elected to be a delegate, one of the amount that were allowed, and then paid our money to the Democratic Party and went to the county convention. And so far, it's pretty much like what went on over these last couple of weeks here.
When you say you paid your money, was that expense money, or was that money actually paid to the DNC to be a delegate?
Money paid to the Democrats so that to offset the cost of having their county convention.
Oh, okay.
Now, whether it offset it, but I think it did more than offset.
Right.
So now we got a county convention, and we sat through many hours, and I'm ready to vote for Hillary. Never did, because, and the same thing happened here with the Republicans, the Democratic Party has allocated more delegate positions than there were any available here in Clark County. So everybody got to be a delegate to the state. Oh yeah, now we had to pay another $100 and some odd to offset the cost of the state convention. So I said, well, this is interesting. Now I'm a delegate to the state for Hillary. Let's go up to Reno. Well, how am I going to get there? Son of a gun. Hillary's campaign rented a jet and flew a whole jet full of us up to Reno.
No.
Yeah, that's all legal. You know, you can pay for transportation, as we've seen lately. Wow. So we get up to Reno, and I've already booked my room, but a lot of people hadn't, because Hillary picked up the tab for the rooms. That's also legal.
You lost out there.
I missed out about $180, I guess.
Wow.
So the next day we had food. Thank you, Hillary. You know, like hoagie sandwiches and stuff like that. But I said, why don't I run for national delegate? So the issue came up, and I had already had a flyer that I handed out to the people on the airplane. Yeah, they got them all in one little place, and name recognition, all that good stuff. And about that time, they said, okay, now we'll start listening to candidates. Oh my God, out of the woodwork came some of these old hands in the party, folks that had been volunteering and things like that. They had placards. I think a couple of them even had something like a band you know, a couple pieces like that, just getting attention,
Wow.
and you didn't even have a chance in a
Professional
spell.
delegates.
Absolutely, and that's who got the delegate positions for
Yeah.
Hillary.
Surprise, surprise.
So I didn't make that, and we came back not by plane, but by a bus. The National Convention was held, and Hillary wasn't doing so well. And she had one last card she could have played, but all of a sudden she came out supporting Barack Obama. And I turned to my wife and I said, Secretary of State. And lo and behold, Obama waved his hand and she was Secretary of State. Now, juxtaposing that to what went on here, I like the ideas of Mr. Trump, as I've told you several times on other shows, so I'll kind of skip on by that. But basically, I want to see some changes at the national level. I've seen it there from across the river in the Pentagon, and I got chased across the river to the Capitol several times. You know, once for senator and several times for congressman. You know, listening to their staffers and their constituents, and I said, this is not how it should be. So I changed my party so I could caucus for Trump. And again, I got elected to be a delegate for Trump. So I paid my $40 to the Republicans this time. And if you were late, you had to pay $45. But during the convention here in Rio, some people decided they wanted their money back because they weren't getting what they were promised. And there were a lot of people that said that.
What were they promised?
Promised that they could be delegates, I think was one of the things that they were upset about. But what took up most?
So wait a minute, so you pay your money before you're even a delegate?
Oh, yeah, you couldn't be a delegate unless you paid your money. In
Oh.
fact, you couldn't be seated as a delegate unless you were on the list that had already paid.
So then if you don't get to be a delegate, you don't get a refund?
Now you're automatically a delegate. I mean, that's just the way it worked. You could be an alternate, or you didn't have to go through the caucus procedure. You could have just gone to the convention, paid your $45, and you would be a self-nominated delegate. Just
All right,
like,
so again, what were they mad about? It wasn't that they weren't gonna be a delegate, they already were kind of.
I wasn't sure exactly what they were because I was in the back of the room at that time, but I heard it come up on the floor with several people hollering they wanted their money back because they weren't getting whatever they.
Well, there was some controversy about they couldn't get credentials, or there was some hold up in a big line, or.
There wasn't, if you want me to drop back on that. I was in a casino and I had the best luck I ever had because I got into one of these long lines not knowing what was going on. There were some 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 lines on my left and about 10 lines on my right, and I got into one. I said, what are we doing? Well, it's alphabetical. I said, and there was up in the front of my line, it said, run to sin, R-U-N, a line, S-I-N. That was my line. And son of a gun, S-E-I-P, falls into run to sin. I'd gotten into the right line for not knowing any better.
Well,
I should have gone the other end of the casino. So the lines were quite long. I was about fourth back. The person in front of me took, objectively, 6 or 7 minutes. They couldn't find the card, even though it was alphabetical. The cards were not in alphabetical.
well,
The guy in front of me, he was very vocal. And, you know, he had all his paperwork there. He had stuff that he had paid his $40. And he got up there, and son of a gun, his name was on the list. So he thought he was in. But they couldn't find his card. So he had to go over to the reconciliation line, or whatever they call it, which was getting longer and longer. Now, when I got up there, I said, okay. And they found my card, so it wasn't real bad, but it did go slow. The sign-ins were supposed to be from 7 to 9. At 9:30, 10 o'clock, the lines were still out there, and they were from the sign-in areas all the way out to the restrooms, which, yeah, it was a long way. Now, people did get in, and then you had to go and you had to self-nominate yourself to be a delegate to go to the state. They don't know how much it's going to cost yet, but I have to pay the money.
you mean just for the delegate?
Just to be a delegate to go to the state.
They don't know what it's gonna cost yet.
Don't know what it's gonna cost. But there was some concern about not being able to tell the price. They're not even sure what hotel yet. Now, one, not so much of a side thing, they had, on 2 occasions, they asked the people in attendance to raise your hand if you were a first-time convention goer. And a lot of hands went up. Now, I understand at the end, they were telling us there were 1,209, I think, was the number of delegates that were there. I had estimated that there was about 60% of newbies, including myself, because I'd gone to Democrat, but I hadn't gone to Republican. I found out from somebody that's on the Trump area that it was more like 70% of these 1,200 people were there for the first time. And I said, do you have any idea how many of those were because of Mr. Trump? And they said, now I'm saying this is they said without confirmation, 85% of those people were there because of Mr. Trump.
Who was they again?
They is someone, I'm not supposed to give the name, but they are associated with the sign-in procedures and the delegate. So
Are they associated with the Republicans or
no,
with
they're
Trump?
associated with the Trump. That's why
Oh,
you have
well,
to take
there
it
you go.
into consideration
Right.
what they're talking about. But they would know, and they do have a preponderance of delegates now that for Mr. Trump. Now, when we get to when we get up to Reno, what's going to happen? I suspect the same thing has happened at the Democratic Party. That the party favorites, those that have been volunteering for years, will get the delegate positions. Now, one big difference between the Democrat and the Republican Party is that with the Democrat Party, I said I was a delegate for Hillary. You notice I didn't say I was a delegate for Trump, because the assignment of who the person's going to vote for is actually made by the Republican Party after the delegates for Cleveland are elected. So if I had been elected, which I think I am, since I am not a real party person, that I may be a Rubio delegate and committed to voting for Rubio on the first ballot, and somebody else might be a Trump. The folks that are running these various campaigns like to get enough of their delegates there, because it could be on a second ballot, then I would vote for Trump, even though I was a Rubio ballot on the first. So we don't know who is going to be a Trump person. And there probably will be the 7 Trump people that were elected, you know, that the popular vote. But as far as who the delegates are going to be, I don't know. So now got any questions on now don't ask me about the platform, because there are 11 planks in the platform, and they argued about some things. I thought there were some pithy issues that came up, like one lady wanted something about birth that be recognized at conception. That got mild support but didn't get approved. But the making of the platform and the various planks took up a lot of time in the afternoon. What I saw when I went through the Democratic side, same thing, except the planks and the platform just basically disappeared, never to be seen again. So we'll wait for that to happen. I mean, I'm talking about the convention. They will have planks in the platform. Now, I promised you that I did some research on the one of the questions that came up very near the end of the convention, and that was on the security of the box that contained the nomination slips for the people that will be delegates going up to Reno. And there's been some email exchanges that they had disappeared, that the Republican Party had done away with them, that there was some hanky-panky going on. And so I tried to run that down, and I did get a response from Charles Munoz, who he calls himself, and he is the state director for Mr. Trump for both Nevada and Arizona. And he says, quote, "Nothing is being hidden or tampered with. He advises that the ballot boxes were inspected, counted, and verified at the Clark GOP caucus office last night by the Trump, Cruz, and Kasich campaigns. So I think we've resolved that there is no hanky-panky going on, that the delegates will go forward, but there is a huge advantage to Trump delegates based with it.
Yes, sir.
I thought-
Steve, Captain Truth has a question.
Great, all right, thank you for the opportunity. I know I heard Michael McDonald on a call-in talk show the other day. I didn't get a chance to call in, but I was on the road, but I listened intently. And I'm curious about the first ballot prescriptions or rules or the flexibility of such. I've heard so many comments from national GOP people. It seems like they're sticking a microphone in front of everybody, and everybody's got thoughts on it. And then when you hear a quote, I wouldn't know if it was Sam Spade or whoever they said it was or not. I've never met him. And so you don't really, I'm a little nervous about depending upon any of that information. But I remember I heard one quote that said that the first ballot requirement to vote a certain way was up to the state, and that not every state had adopted that type of a instruction. And just because, well, in other words, a person could get maybe 1,300 vote delegates to the convention, and because the states that aren't requiring certain delegates to vote in a certain way on the first ballot, a person could get 1,300 votes and not get the nomination. Are you familiar with that at all, or was that a potential misstatement or?
Somewhat. I think I'd like to slice that a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to the 1237.
Right.
Which is that number.
The alleged required.
Well, not alleged. That is the rule that was adopted in 2012 by the
Okay.
Republican National Committee, by the Rules Committee. Drop back just a little bit more. The Rules Committee for the Republicans is made up of 112, I think it is, 112 people. It's a male and a female from each state and 6 of the territories, such as Puerto Rico, I guess Guam, and things like that. Now, this male and female from each of the states is going to be a delegate. Now, you can hear that on TV. They say, oh, it's going to be a delegate. But as I said a little earlier, who are these delegates that are going to be picked by the state committee? They're going to be the old party folks. Now, where's the old party folks right now leaning? Certainly not to Mr. Trump.
Definitely not.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm getting assurances that the 2 that are going from Nevada will be Trump people. Now, assurances now, how about after the state, then we know a little bit better. Okay, so the 1237 was put in place in 2012. That I found, I kept looking and looking, it took me a while, but about a week and a half ago, I found that 1237 is a rule that can be changed. So when that Rules Committee comes in, they can make it 1,100, they can make it 1,500, or leave it at 1237, which they probably will. But they can change any other of those 20-some last rules that were put in 2012. That gets to the number part that you talked about, right?
Well, I was concerned about a difference between the states, and if I was concerned about how much an actual requirement to vote a certain way on the first ballot pertained to different states.
I am glad. You're sounding a lot like, what's his name, Priebus, saying that they have no control over the states.
Right.
Well, let's see here. Due to the 2012 Republican National Committee rule change that forced the Colorado GOP to ditch the straw poll. Now, that sounds like the National Committee did it. During the 2012 Republican National Committee, a new rule was passed which stated that any state or territory GOP party that holds a primary straw poll must bind their delegates to the results of the convention.
Ah,
See, now, here we get the National Committee has changed those rules, and Ross Priebus says that they have no control over the states. Now, this thing in Colorado is going pretty hot and heavy right now.
definitely.
And the reason is that Colorado didn't want to give up on their delegates. The Colorado Republican Party preferred to keep its delegates, there's that word, unbound. Okay, they preferred to do that and decided to not have a straw poll, meaning they didn't really have an election.
Right, that was my understanding, but, of course, Ted Cruz and the national media didn't really come through with a complete understanding of that as far as I was concerned.
Cruz people knew what was going on, and I would suspect Trump people pretty much knew also. But what they didn't know was that when the voting was going down, there was a ballot placed in front of the folks that were going to vote. And this had the people, I've got a number here, it's amazing to me. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 580 people wanted to be a delegate. And that's what the thousands packed an arena in Colorado Springs as more than 600 candidates spoke for 20 seconds each on their effort to be a delegate. There were all those folks out there. There was an anti-abortion activist who's been helping write the party platform for years, and her secondary goal was to elect Cruz as president. She's been very influential in the Republican Party. Her name is Kendall Umro. I hope I pronounced it somewhat correctly. There were 587 people who applied to be a delegate. 60% of them are unpledged. I just happened to run into these numbers because Colorado is pretty hot. I think it's about now when they're going to have their demonstration.
Yeah, that's supposed to be anytime.
Like right about now. I'm waiting to see how many, one of the comments.
How many show up for that, or
Yeah,
how it goes?
yeah, it's
or-
supposed to be on the steps of the Capitol. Now, where's it gonna get to? Don't know, but remember, they're unbound. Means they don't have to vote for anybody particularly. I think it's 30 are for Cruz and 30% for Cruz, 7% for Trump, and 2% for Kasich is what it came out in Colorado. So it isn't a complete wipeout, but it was pretty much Cruz.
But
That
you got
ballot,
60% missing there in your numbers.
yes, there is.
What are those?
They're probably
Unbound.
Unknown?
unbound. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got you.
I found an interesting quote. These
Well, one
delegates,
time,
these delegates are very honored and very sought after, and people are awarded them because they participate actively year-round, year after year, at the grassroots for conservative and Republican causes.
Oh, great.
It's
Those are the people that are causing the problem, Clark. We gotta reward them.
It's exactly, these are the good old boys and girls at the head of the party. The same thing happened here at the convention. I mean, we had all these 1,200 people out there, and as I said, perhaps 70% were first timers. And who ran the show? Who did most of the talking? It's the boys up front, and the girls. A couple of them were up there, but they didn't do much talking. It was the folks that were the old timers. This guy DC, I don't know what his last name is, but he wanted to get on the Republican committee, the Central Committee, and he says, "I've been doing this for so many years." Well, he got elected again. I understand that was a runoff, but these are the people that are running the party, and I think it's the same in every ding dong state. I have a couple other things on.
When you say they got elected, who did the electing?
The folks from they're broken down into A, B, C, D, E, and F categories, and voting district type things, and you had a slate of nominees that were going on to the Central Committee here, And if there were two from each of those, you only had two candidates, well then I didn't get to vote because we only had two. I have no idea who the heck they were. But they did get elected, but usually they're old party favorites. Says the process of the Republican Party for 160 years. That's the way we've done business. Our entire country was founded on this, says Mary Madeline. Remember the Raging Cajun's wife?
Yep.
And she said that on the Steve Malzberg show. We are a representative republic, which is the key to all this stuff. You know, we don't vote for who we want to be the elected individual. We're now voting for delegates to vote, who will vote for delegates, who will then vote for other delegates, who will then go to the national committee and vote for who the hell knows.
And this goes back to my original solution that I've been touting for months and months and months. We need to get rid of both political parties because they're corrupt organizations, period.
Well, I think the first order of business is we need, as many of us as possible need to be in Cleveland.
I have a high school classmate that says she wants to go to the political Super Bowl. Now, she lives in New York, so I fed her the information on how she can be a delegate, which won't happen. I said, but if you pay your money, you might be an alternate. So I would look into being an alternate delegate from New York, because there's going to be tons of them. I said, you might not get to sit on the floor, but you'll sit in the balcony and you'll know some of these people, and you'll be able to go to all the free parties and all that are lavished on these delegates, who can get trips to Mar-a-Lago by Trump, and down there for 3 days, give them a new set of golf clubs just to buy their vote. I'm being a little bit over the top, but it's all legal. You can do that. It's just like stealing.
Are you planning on being in Cleveland?
No.
No.
My problem.
Not at this point, at least.
Well, my thing is a personal thing because my wife is disabled. And she's on oxygen 24/7, and she needs not a lot of care or anything, but she just needs someone around if a oxygen hose gets kinked or something like that. So it'd be very difficult. She knows that I might have to go somewhere, and maybe just up to Reno for that one overnight day, and one of her girlfriends will come by.
What's the democratic principle behind an unbound delegate and how they vote? Is there any democracy to that principle?
Unbound means you vote for anybody. If you're bound, you
Where's
got to
the
vote for the person
democracy
you
in that
say.
principle?
You hope the heck it's the person that's supporting you, because I think the three of us have agreed it's a pretty shitty system.
There's no system. It's
The system is there to protect the folks that are doing it.
There's implied integrity and honesty.
It's not by
At
the
this point,
people. It's not by the people. It's by the delegates. I didn't think that was in the Constitution. We the delegates.
Remember, it's a republic. Now,
I understand in Pennsylvania they have, if you win the state, however you win the state, you get allotted 17 delegates out of whatever it is, 50 or something delegates or so.
Commonwealth of
And then
Pennsylvania.
the rest of the delegates, other than the 17, you're not voting for a candidate. So you're not voting for Cruz, Cajun, or Trump. You're voting for a delegate.
Just the same in Colorado. They had the list of delegates, and I saw a picture of the ballot, and somebody had marked it up. Of the, I would say maybe 30 that were on that particular page, there were at least 8 where it said name missing, wrong name, and these are all Trump types. Now, back to Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth, my home state. I was born in Pennsylvania. Commonwealth has 71 delegates, but only 14 are at large. These ones are bound by the popular vote statewide, and only for the first ballot. 3 delegates are allocated to state party leaders, like we find in many states, where the Democrats, have these super delegates. What are they for? Protect the folks in power. The rest, 54 other delegates, are chosen in each congressional district. I will read on. I haven't read this one yet, but I'll read it out here and see what it says. The real clincher is that the candidates for delegates are not identified on the ballot as supporting any presidential contender. But much like I mentioned, it's done here for the Republican Party.
So what's the platform that they're running on?
They're not running on any platform. They
Right,
just want to
so-
become a delegate.
So they're just names.
They're just names.
We don't know who they stand for, we don't know
We
a damn thing about it, and that's what we're voting for.
We don't know.
Some unknown. We don't have a clue who they are.
If we stood back and we were a supporter of Trump, what we're trying to do is get as many damn delegates as we can so that they're gonna have to assign the name Trump to a lot of these delegates, even though they are unbound. And they're not bound to the winner of any primary vote either. And that's the fight that's taking place. I got some other things here, but the rules, I find it very offensive that Priebus is saying that they have no control. Now, one of the things I did, I raise a little pain a little bit, that's, if I'm running, the reason I'm running for assembly is because I appreciate the article that was in the Tribune. I think it was two editions back. Surprisingly, I brought that up and people agreed with the way that out of the mainstream reasons of why some of the laws were passed. I mean, yeah, it's politics, and they did agree with your assessment of a couple of the assembly people, a couple that I know that I've met. But I showed a kind of a petition that said that if Mr. Trump is treated, I'll use the word unkindly, that's not the one I used on that, innocuously is what I used, that I will not vote for president. And I will vote for every down, I didn't use the word down ticket, but that's the political term for everybody else that's underneath the president, that's on the Democratic ticket. Well, people said, why? And I said, well, I want to penalize the Republican Party. That would mean,
I think they're doing an excellent job of penalizing themselves.
but
If they try to get away with this.
But I'm talking about not voting for a senator to replace Harry Reid. It would be a Republican. That's not good for the Republican Party. No congressman. And if I'm a person of my own convictions, I wouldn't be able to vote for myself either, because I'm running as a Republican. Now, getting past the primary might be a little difficult, but anybody that's in District 12, take a good look at Seip. The people at the convention were in favor of the idea of not voting for the Republican Party. That didn't seem to bother them. About half of I only talked about 20 people. But there were 4 or 5 that wanted to write in the name of Donald Trump. That sounded like a reasonable thing. I
Without a party affiliation, you mean?
just write in the name of Donald Trump on the ballot for president.
Even though his name's on there as a Republican, you'd write in the
It
name
wouldn't be
too?
on there because he wouldn't be the nominee,
Right?
right?
Well, okay.
So I did some more.
Okay.
So I did some more research. NRS 293, 270 says no write-ins are allowed.
Right.
Another reason to get rid of the parties. Who the hell do they think they are? They're not even in the Constitution. How do they make these rules? They're unconstitutional.
Well, that's a state statute. That's.
And the parties.
But that's unconstitutional. States don't make the Constitution. The Constitution makes the Constitution. If it's not enumerated in the Constitution, you leave it to the states. But the parties are state parties. They're not federal parties.
They're not even, they're just corporations. They're not part of the election commission. Nothing
Exactly.
like
They're total corrupt organizations.
And that's the reason I'm running, because when I ran into what the Republican Party did during that caucus, it was chaos.
Yeah, well, that's.
Now, some of them I'm sure were run well, and the planning seemed good, but the execution was lousy. And then I started checking on the party itself. They had 10 days in which to write down the list of who were voted in as delegates. It took them 3.5 weeks. It got right up to almost the day when you had to have your response back so that you could come to this convention. Never realizing that you didn't have to do it. You could just come in and self-nominate yourself and you could have been admitted. But I'm just looking at that, and you know that the chairperson, Williams, I think Ed Williams,
Yeah.
seemed like a reasonable guy on the phone, but what he was saying didn't always happen the way he said it was going to happen, that he resigned. Well, tell it like it is, he got his ass fired. during the convention. So he is no longer the chair of the Republican Party.
Who fires him?
I suspect it was the gentleman that ran the
McDonald.
convention. Now, I don't know his name, but he was wearing, it looked like a police uniform. He's from Laughlin, and I think your listeners, if they're tuned into this, will know that. I believe also that he is the individual that filed an ethics complaint against Williams. I don't know the specifics, so I don't want to make a guess on what it was about, but I think it had to do with money or something.
Kevin actually had him on for after hearing about the ethics complaint and the resignation. He contacted him and had him on, and he explained that the way he explained it is that he became aware of the ethics complaint that was filed, and that it would be determined his involvement in something. It had to do with the payment to the Rio, which I said was Riviera at one time. I remembered it by the R, but I got the wrong casino. It was his agreement to hold the convention at the Rio. And the clause that they had the difficulty with was that the president was to receive 40,000 points, Rio points, whatever that means, and they were to be his personal property. And when some of the people on this board that overlooks the contract, it required their signatures. One of the individuals who said, well, I questioned that and asked the people that were proposing the contract from the Rio if that could be amended, and they told me no. And Kevin was kind of surprised. What, they told you no, and then you went ahead and signed it? He said, well, it took my signature. It was kind of like, going along to get along. It sounded like to me. And that was just the story that I could put together by hearing the comments about that.
Same story I heard. Money, like my frequent player is at Boulder Station, and it takes 100 points per $1. Now, if the Rio might be different, might not be, but it's 40,000. Say it's $400 or something like that. It might be. And what things that I've run into at station casinos is that they will only have one person. But I think it was worth somebody checking it out. Like when I was in government service, who would get the frequent flyer miles when you were traveling on government money? I had a boss, senior executive service boss. He would always go on, what was it? I forget which airline. No matter where the heck he went, even if it didn't go there, he would find a way to get a couple of legs on that particular. I think it was Northwest, so that he would get his frequent flyer miles. And as a SES, he would go somewhere and they'd get VIP treatment, and he'd stick around for an hour or two and do whatever he wanted, and then he'd have his frequent flyer miles. Should that have gone back to the government? Hell yeah, it should have gone back to the government. I mean, somebody else could have traveled somewhere to save money for the government, but like you said, that's just the way it is.
We had a situation like that come up in a real estate group that I was a member of on the board, and the computer company came in and offered us it was a pretty sightly sum. I think, if I remember right, it was like $1,500 to conduct a seminar and have our group have a group seminar and have them offer Apple computers, which were brand new at the time, to all of our group, and a lot of people bought the computers. And we had already, as a board, decided that from now on, our meetings were going to be conducted wherever we decided to go, and that money was going to go for lunch for everybody in the group. And it seemed like Mr. Anderson, was it? Whoever the president was that was getting the 4,000 points, it seemed like he could have said, well, from now on our meetings are going to be at the Rio, and we're going to pick up the lunch for everybody. I mean, that would seem like there would have been a logical way out.
You could have,
It seemed like that's the way it could be handled with the government. I mean, that you give it to the government, well, the government doesn't go down there and spend it. Somebody has to try to spend it.
I think he could have used that 40,000 points to pay for the coffee setup. Now, I don't know.
Sure.
You know, things like that. He certainly couldn't have bought everybody a hot dog because they were $8. I told my wife, I said, you got chili dog there at home, how much are you gonna charge me? I said, certainly not $8, we don't even have any chili. In Colorado, they said they had, the planned vote had been canceled and 1 million Republicans were sidelined, you know, things like that. I just don't know how to address the good old Boys and Girls Network at the head of each state.
I don't know if you know it or not, I've also heard reports that Matt Drudge was threatened with criminal prosecution for citing to a link of a Colorado newspaper.
I didn't understand what you said. He is being cited?
He
or
was
he is citing
threatened
somebody?
with criminal prosecution for disseminating information, link to a Colorado newspaper explaining what you were just explaining about the cancellation of the vote and people's dissatisfaction with that. And of course, the host that was explaining that said, well, if they're gonna, if they get away with that, can freedom of speech last much longer? If you can just send somebody to a newspaper through the internet and be prosecuted for that, it's a strange world that we live in.
I can't say this is Mary Madeline because I pulled out some things and wrote it on here, but it's Colorado. No one forced anyone to cancel the vote in Colorado. Political insiders made a choice to cancel it, just like we're saying.
Right.
And it was the wrong choice. Responsible leaders should be shocked by the idea that party officials can simply cancel elections in America if they don't like what the voters may decide. Well, it's going to be playing out over the next couple of months, I think. I don't know how to address that. I only have one vote. I know how I vote. That's why I'm kind of running for office. I want to find out what pressures are put on politicians from the side of when you nominate yourself. I am getting 1.5 bits of advertising a day on campaign materials. I'm getting about every other day suggestions from some company how they can run my campaign. About every day on average, I'm getting flyers. Come to this meeting and we'll do a video on you. Come and pay $50 to have dinner and we'll discuss your positions. I mean, this is going on every day, and the reason that's what some of the things I wanted to find out about what goes on to the other side, where the pressure is put onto a political person running for a position. I think it'll get worse.
I was planning on attending Veterans in Politics thing tomorrow and Sunday at the Rhythm Kitchen. Were you invited to that?
Chris Edwards?
Steve Sampson.
Now there's another one with veterans. I usually tell them that I'm, at this time, I can't make a commitment to make it, and I sign it, Colonel, retired. And I think you should give an idea that I'm very much pro-veteran, but I don't want to detail these kind of things. My approach to this campaign will be very simple. I want to try to get name recognition out there. I am not going to reiterate and rehash what people think are the problems that you usually get from politicians. Politicians are out there to scare the hell out of you. I mean, you just listen to Cruz. He's telling you everything that's freaking wrong with the country. You know, he's not telling you.
And what he's going to do.
No, he's not telling
If he
you.
ever gets around to it.
How can a single-term senator who has managed no more than 100 people in his life now run the country? You got 104 different offices in the White House by itself. In any case, I only have one thing that I'd like to push, and it may be controversial, it may not be, but I think if all the ads, at least here in Nevada, because that's all we're dealing with, were bilingual. In other words, it would help me know if they're talking about tomatoes or whether they're talking about turnips. Now, I speak a little Arabic, shway Arabic, a bissel Deutsch, a little German, petit peu français, but I speak even less. I know some words in Spanish, and I think this would help me learn some words, and it would help some people that are speaking the Spanish language. I think it would help them too. You know, you look at Canada, 1969 was when the law was passed up there, getting along quite nicely with French and English. So that's about the only thing that I would push. Other than that, I want the people that live in District 12 to tell me what they would like. You know, give a damn about whether you want sidewalks or you don't want sewage. That's not state business. That's local. That's what the commissioners get into. Now, I do have the perfect background to be a commissioner, but that's a long way down the line. You want to talk about?
Well, you corrupt? What's your background to qualify as a commissioner?
Oh,
You already corrupt?
oh, well, no, but I can be corrupted.
Oh, okay, well, there you
It's like
go.
when I did my security clearance, they asked me, can you be bought? I said, sure, but who's gonna pay for what I know with at least $500,000? Yeah, I think as an undergraduate engineer, my MBAs type things, the planning and programming that I did for the federal government for years, the deal as an inspector general, working for the Corps of Engineers, my real estate broker's experience in Maryland. And I know what the hell goes on around these roads, buildings, bridges, electrical.
You mean the cones?
Yeah, I was thinking of stealing one today because there's a pothole up front.
They'd never miss it. You got an unlimited supply.
Lots of them. So, but I didn't realize that all 7 of the of them now are Democrats. And the thing that really piped me the most was that they apparently are making decisions in closed session. I'm a big open meeting person. I was on the board of directors of several different housing administrations, HOAs or condominiums. In fact, I was a real pain in the ass when I was president of one, hammering on Maryland's open meeting laws. And to the point where they got enough clout to remove me as president because the investors didn't like the idea that I wanted everything out in front of people. So yeah, I guess I'd have to put in there that I was on the board of directors of homeowners associations too. And there's other things, the schooling, the military schooling. I can't see how the folks in Washington keep their jobs when they don't know what the other agencies are doing.
Well,
And there are classes they could go to for that.
certainly one way they do it was, and it leads right into the hot issue that I expect to continue on through the election cycle that I heard today. And that has to do with the deliberate dumbing down of the people. I don't know if you're familiar with Charlotte Iserby.
No.
She wrote a book. She had been a lifetime school teacher that just got mad as hell and wasn't going to take it anymore. She saw the federal government's increasing influence in the local issue of education of children, and she attempted to call attention to it through that book. It was called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of the American People. And the issue today that I just heard that I expect to become possibly although I don't know how the other side could possibly exist, it's the English. It's a ELL, I think, English language, I don't know, program or something in our schools. They talked about the business that offers to teach you a foreign language for, I think they said $199. 5 people can at once get the guarantee. In a year, you'll be speaking that language or they'll refund your money. I've forgotten the name of the company. But here in Nevada, we've spent tens of millions of dollars trying to teach our school kids the English language. There are some children that have been in that now for 5 years and still have no working capabilities of the English language. So when I remember when I told the gentleman that was on my show that when he first got here, he says, sounds like the program's running excellently.
Yeah, it's self-perpetuating, isn't it? One of the jobs I had was monitoring a contract for teaching English as a second language. That was one of the things they did. There was a lot of vocational skills as other subjects. There was a utilization of my master's in educational administration. So that I have a term that that I've been using, not for very long, sheeple. Sheeple, that's us. You know, a contraction of the word sheep and people. That's how we're treated.
That and somebody ought to do something. Not me, I'm way too busy, but somebody ought to do something. That's the one that kind of grinds at my spine every time I hear it. I will give Michelle Fiore a plug, though, that I did hear on last week's show. There was somebody that called in and they said, Michelle, what are you going to do about this? And she said, Eric, what do you mean, what am I going to do about it? You know how many times I hear that a day? There's only 24 hours in the day. But why don't you tell me what you've been doing to get it changed or to correct it? And then I'll give you, my suggestions on what you might want to consider doing also. We've become a society where it's not important, I'm too busy.
I forwarded Clark an email that contained some, I don't know what the politician, no, I guess he was a school teacher. No, he was a politician in Florida, that's right. And he's retiring, and he decided that he was going to publish, 535 people that are in charge of things, the Congress, the House and Senate, Supreme Court, and the President. Said if everyone agrees that we should have a balanced budget, why don't we have a balanced budget? And it goes on for a list of 12, 15 different items like that, all pointing back to Washington, and that's another reason for Trump. I think he can shake up some of that stuff, putting people in the various positions that have some credibility. He only's talking about the trade things, but there are so many other offices there in Washington where the folks like Heidi Cruz, for instance, who got an MBA, and did she go to work? No. She went to work for George W. Bush's campaign. And I've seen so many of the people working on the campaigns as unpaid, and after the campaign is successful, these people get to be political appointees. Back when I was looking at it, it was only $170,000 a year, when people were probably making 60 or 70. And these people would come into the federal government, and they'd be in charge of certain areas, and the folks that had been there for years were being told what to do, not so much politically, but because of these young people that coming out of the college would have ideas counter to what made good sense. And usually they would only stay 2 or 3 years, because if they stayed longer, the shit they threw on the wall would start to stink. And so they move on before they get caught up with them.
Before they might be held responsible.
And so there's political appointees because you're associated with a campaign. Of course, then Heidi Cruz went on to work for Condoleezza Rice, who got her into, Goldman Sachs.
Right.
And then moved on to J.P. Morgan. And then she's a advisor for people's portfolios. Well, she did the right time, really, because the stock market was going up like crazy, and all you had to do was throw darts, and you did good.
Do you know, now that you exhibited your expertise or knowledge regarding Heidi Cruz, I heard way back before when I didn't know anything about Cruz or Trump or anybody, if you can think back to that time, and I remember that I was gathering information. I'm not going to make a mistake without getting some more information, and it came to my attention, and I haven't had anybody, I've never heard a disclaimer of any sort, that Heidi Cruz is a member of the CFR. Now, I know I asked Danny Tarkanian this morning when he was on Kevin Wall's show, and I'll give Kevin and Danny both, they both weren't sure what the CFR was. And I explained to them it was the Council on Foreign Relations. And as far as I was concerned, they were a subversive group that advocates the one world government, which would certainly change our way of life in this constitutional republic if there's no longer a United States of America, if there's just a one world government telling us all what to do. I thought that was a subversive group. I was amazed that when I checked my email when the gentleman that I had on from the Sun sent me a link, I saw a message from Heidi. And for those of you who recognize my voice and listen to my show or check up from time to time, I sent Heidi a email. She was asking for money, and I explained to her that I couldn't afford any at this time, and I'd put a hold on all national contributions because I didn't know where the truth was. I was investigating Mr. Cruz and Mr. Trump, and it was a little alarming to me that I was continuing to hear people who were in favor of Cruz, but none of them were aware of her involvement with the CFR, and I asked her if that was correct or not. So I'll give you a report Monday or Tuesday if she gets back to me. I'll have more information soon.
Can we bounce that, let me bounce that up just one couple of notches.
Okay.
Having breakfast over at Boulder Station, heard a conversation at the next table about the number of FBI agents investigating Hillary. I had heard from a guy in my local area who has a friend who works for the FBI in Colorado, and he said it's really 340 people. And I shared that with the person, and I said, and you know that she's a member of this secret society. And he said, you mean, and I think I've got it right, the Voterbound or something like that? Society?
Bilderbergers.
There you go. And that is more scary to me than most anything we talked about today. You talk about the political parties, you talk about each state's political people. These people want to control the whole world.
Yeah.
And she's part of it. She's been to their meetings. I don't think the last 2 years I haven't read that, but.
Well, definitely we had on reliable information that her and Barack Obama were called there right in the middle of the campaign season last election cycle. Of course, the press couldn't find Obama, and they wondered what happened. And they were all on the plane. Barack never got on. He had another plane jet waiting, and he and Hillary allegedly both flew to be counseled by the Bilderberger associations. These are the people that it's been reported they decide where the next war will be 8 to 10 years from now.
All that stuff. Right?
Exactly.
Yep.
They're not friends of this constitutional republic, and they're not friends of freedom and liberty, folks.
But they like sheeple.
Yeah, and neither is Obama, that's for sure. We got 7.5 years of evidence on him. He's not American.
But he was placed there, and there was a deal made with Hillary, and I think there are those that think that, obviously she's fully convinced that she is protected no matter what. There have been a lot of statements made regarding resignations from the FBI. If she isn't, if charges aren't brought, I would encourage anybody that listens to my statement at this time to get you a Hillary for
Prison.
2016 for prison, exactly. And you can kind of identify where you're coming from. If you think that the laws in this country mean something.
Well, they better mean something or we're done as a country. So anyways, on that, let's take the rest of the week off.
You saw my article in Tribune about Hillary in handcuffs.
Yep.
I'm pretty specific in there of what the law says,
Oh,
not how you'd hear about it on TV.
yep.
Okay, well, I'll surely look that up. I'd like to thank you for your effort.
Yeah, thank you, Walter, for coming in, doing the show with us. So you're welcome anytime. Anytime you get some supplemental information, be sure to drop on by. We like to hear it. We want to be up to date on this stuff. We want to be heard. So anyways, thanks again, and thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Monday morning, we'll be back. Thanks.
If you have anything that you'd like me to disseminate at the veterans and politics thing, I'm surely would.
Now, my thinking on this is,
And I would-
I don't,
I would
if I was
explain
running,
to
if I was
Steve,
running for judge or something that would be citywide, whatever, I'd probably be there. But this is District 12, we